Something about this story refused to stay inside the boundaries of coincidence. At first, it sounded like one of those strange internet rumors people pass around late at night, an anonymous confession, a forgotten voice message, a diary with missing pages, and a sentence that somehow found its way to the exact person it seemed destined for. Most people dismissed it as fiction. Others insisted it had really happened, only under different names. No official investigation was ever opened because, technically, every clue appears meaningless until it suddenly isn't. Whether you believe in destiny, coincidence, or nothing at all. By the end of this story, you may find yourself wondering whether some conversations happen long before two people ever stand face to face. Because this is about you. Or at least, about someone exactly like you. On an unusually quiet autumn afternoon, the town of Ashmore looked exactly as it always had. Old brick buildings. A bookstore that had survived 3 generations. A cafe where every customer seemed to know every other customer. The kind of place where strangers were noticed within minutes. Nothing extraordinary ever happened there. That was exactly why what happened next unsettled everyone. At 2:17 p.m., a young woman named Eleanor entered the bookstore carrying a notebook wrapped carefully in brown paper. She wasn't famous. She wasn't wealthy. She wasn't known for attracting attention. She simply asked the elderly shop owner a peculiar question. If someone left words for another person, years before they ever met, where would those words belong? The shop owner smiled politely. In a letter. Eleanor slowly shook her head. No, because the person doesn't know they exist yet. The smile disappeared. The old man later admitted that something about the way she said those words made him feel unexpectedly cold. Not frightened. Just uneasy. She purchased an empty journal. Paid in cash. Left without another word. Security cameras captured everything. Nothing unusual. No mystery. Just another customer. Or so everyone believed. 3 months later. That notebook would become the center of a story no one could explain. Eleanor lived alone in a small apartment overlooking the river. She worked remotely as a translator. She had very few friends. No criminal history. No mental health records. No strange online activity. Investigators who later reviewed her life described it as remarkably ordinary. Perhaps too ordinary. She kept plants alive. Read mystery novels. Walked every evening at precisely 6 o'clock. Called her grandmother every Sunday. Nothing suggested she was about to become connected to one of the strangest emotional mysteries ever whispered about in Ashmore. Yet every mystery begins with something ordinary. A routine. A habit. A sentence. A choice. No one notices the beginning while they're living inside it. Exactly 4 days after buying the journal, Eleanor began writing. Not about herself. Not about memories. Not about dreams. Instead, she addressed every page to someone she had never met. The first entry was only 14 words. I don't know your name yet, but today I felt you becoming real. No date. No explanation. Just that sentence. The second entry became stranger. I hope wherever you are. Today wasn't as lonely as yesterday. The third. I think you smiled today. I don't know why I know that. Week after week. The journal filled with messages. Not predictions. Not fantasies. Not romance. Conversations. As though she believed another soul already existed somewhere beyond her reach. Someone she couldn't identify. Someone she couldn't contact. Someone she somehow trusted completely. She never claimed supernatural abilities. She never spoke publicly about destiny. She simply wrote. Every evening. At exactly 8:30. Never missing a day. Not once. Across the country. Hundreds of miles away. A man named Daniel unknowingly began changing in ways even he couldn't explain. He had recently moved into a small apartment after ending a relationship that lasted nearly 7 years. Friends noticed something unusual. He became calmer. Less angry. More hopeful. He started smiling alone while making coffee. He bought flowers for his kitchen despite never caring about decoration before. When coworkers asked why he seemed different, he laughed. I honestly don't know. He meant it. He truly didn't know. Because he hadn't met Eleanor. He didn't know she existed. He had never heard of Ashmore. Nothing connected their lives. Nothing. Except timing. One rainy evening, Daniel received an unexpected phone call from his older sister. They hadn't spoken properly in weeks. The conversation lasted less than 6 minutes. As she prepared to hang up, she casually asked him something unusual. If your future wife could hear one thing about you today, what would you want someone to tell her? Daniel laughed. What kind of question is that? I don't know, she admitted. It just came to me. He thought quietly. Then answered. I'd want her to know. I'm trying. His sister waited. Trying what? Trying to become someone she won't regret finding. Silence. Then she whispered. That's beautiful. The conversation ended. Neither sibling thought about it again. Except. Someone else somehow did. The following night. Eleanor opened her journal. Without hesitation, she wrote a sentence unlike any she'd written before. He spoke about you today, and what he said was beautiful. She stopped writing. Read the words again. Crossed nothing out. Added nothing. Closed the notebook. The timestamp from a digital photograph later found on her laptop showed exactly 8:41 p.m. Investigators eventually compared phone records. There was no connection. No shared contacts. No location overlap. No internet searches. No emails. Nothing. No possible way Eleanor could have known Daniel had spoken words almost identical in spirit less than 24 hours earlier. Coincidence? Maybe. But the coincidences were only beginning. Months passed. The journal grew heavier. Its pages became increasingly personal. She described emotions she couldn't possibly verify. There are mornings when you doubt yourself. You apologize too often. You hide exhaustion behind jokes. You still carry guilt that doesn't belong to you. If someone had handed those pages to Daniel. He later admitted every line would have felt painfully accurate. But he never saw them. Not then. Ashmore celebrated its annual Lantern Festival every winter. Families gathered by the river. Children released floating lights onto the water. Tourists filled every hotel. Music echoed through narrow streets. Eleanor attended every year. Always alone. Always carrying her journal. Witnesses remembered seeing her standing near the riverbank watching hundreds of lanterns drift into darkness. She never released one herself. Instead, she whispered something. No one heard clearly. Except a little girl standing nearby. Years later, when asked what Eleanor had said, the now-grown woman answered with complete certainty. She said, I hope you find your way here when you're ready. No one knew who you was. That same evening. Nearly 300 miles away. Daniel unexpectedly cancelled plans with friends. He couldn't explain why. He simply felt he needed to stay home. Instead of attending dinner, he spent hours looking through old family photographs. One picture caught his attention. It showed his grandparents standing beside a river covered in floating lanterns. On the back, only 3 handwritten words appeared. "When you're ready." Daniel had never noticed them before. The first truly impossible event happened the following spring. At exactly 10:06 a.m., Eleanor entered a small antique shop. She wandered quietly until stopping before an old wooden music box. The owner approached. "Beautiful piece." She nodded. "It already belongs to someone." He smiled. "Then they'll buy it." "No." She looked strangely certain. "I'll buy it." Confused, the owner wrapped the box. Before leaving, Eleanor asked him one final question. "If someone accidentally gives away something meant for another person, does destiny still find them?" The owner laughed nervously. "I suppose so." She answered softly. "I hope you're right." She never opened the music box. Not once. It remained sealed inside its original paper for nearly 11 months. Receipts proved it. Dust patterns confirmed it. Neighbors verified it. The package sat untouched on a shelf. Waiting. For whom? No one knew. Daniel's life continued changing. Without planning to, he accepted a new job. The company happened to be headquartered only 40 minutes from Ashmore. He almost rejected the offer. Almost. If one email had arrived 5 minutes later, he would have accepted another position in another city. Tiny decisions. Tiny accidents. Tiny moments. They quietly rearranged entire futures. The move wasn't easy. His apartment overlooked railway tracks instead of rivers. The neighborhood felt unfamiliar. He knew no one. Still, something felt strangely peaceful. Almost as if he'd returned somewhere he'd never visited before. He couldn't explain it. He stopped trying. 3 weeks after moving, he discovered the bookstore. The same bookstore where Eleanor had once asked where unfinished words belonged. The elderly owner recognized Daniel immediately. Not because they'd met. Because Daniel looked exactly like someone the old man had imagined after hearing Eleanor's question all those months ago. He later described the feeling like recognizing someone from a dream. Daniel browsed quietly. Purchased a mystery novel. As he prepared to leave, the owner almost asked him something. Instead, he remained silent. A decision he would regret for years. That evening, Eleanor wrote another journal entry. "I think you're closer now." She paused. Looked toward the window. Smiled faintly. "I hope this town is kind to you." Again. Impossible. She didn't know he'd moved nearby. She couldn't. Records proved they had never crossed paths. Yet. Then the dreams began. Daniel dreamed repeatedly about walking through unfamiliar streets toward a bookstore. Inside, someone stood beside a shelf holding an unopened package. Every time he approached, he woke up. The dream repeated 17 times. Always identical. Always ending before he could see the person's face. He dismissed it as stress. Most people would. Meanwhile, Eleanor experienced dreams of her own. Not romantic dreams. Not prophetic visions. Simple conversations. She always sat across from someone whose face remained hidden by sunlight. She could never hear the beginning. Only the ending. The same sentence echoed every time. "I spoke about you today." Nothing else. She always woke before asking who had spoken. Psychologists who later examined journal records suggested pattern recognition. Subconscious emotional projection. Loneliness. Confirmation bias. Every explanation sounded reasonable. Until investigators discovered the dates. The timestamps. The photographs. The witnesses. None of it fit neatly together. One afternoon, Daniel visited the town library searching for local history books. A librarian accidentally handed him the wrong volume. Inside, folded between 2 pages, was a handwritten bookmark. It wasn't part of the library collection. No one knew how it got there. It read, "Some people arrive in your story long before your eyes recognize them." No signature. No date. Daniel kept staring at it. The handwriting looked oddly familiar despite never having seen it before. He returned the book. Forgot the bookmark remained inside. Hours later, another visitor borrowed the same copy. That visitor was Eleanor. She opened the book. The bookmark fell onto her lap. Witnesses confirmed she froze for nearly a minute without moving. Instead of appearing frightened, she whispered one quiet sentence. "So, you answered." The librarian assumed she was talking on Bluetooth earphones. She wasn't wearing any. She carefully placed the bookmark inside her journal. She never told anyone. Summer arrived. Ashmore became warmer. Busier. Tourists replaced silence. Life moved on. Except the invisible thread connecting 2 strangers continued tightening. Neither knew the other's name. Neither searched online. Neither believed fate controlled everything. Yet circumstances kept moving them toward the same places. The same streets. The same mornings. The same cafes. Again and again. Always separated by minutes. One left. The other arrived. One turned left. The other turned right. Enough to prevent meeting. Enough to make later timelines almost unbearable to read. Because if either had paused for 10 more seconds, everything would have happened differently. Then came Tuesday. The date every witness remembered. Not because anything dramatic happened immediately. Because afterward, everyone realized how close the impossible had come. At 9:11 a.m., Daniel entered the Riverside Cafe. For nearly 20 minutes, he wrote a letter he never intended to send. No address. No recipient. Only thoughts. At the bottom of the page he wrote, "I hope whoever you're becoming, you're smiling today." He folded the paper. Left it accidentally beneath the sugar container. Walked away. Exactly 6 minutes later, Eleanor entered. Ordered tea. Chose the very same table. The waitress cleared cups. Lifted the sugar container. Noticed the folded page. Thinking it belonged to Eleanor. She placed it beside her. Without looking. Without asking. Without realizing. Eleanor stared at the folded paper. She hesitated. Something about it made her hands tremble. Slowly, she unfolded it. Read every word. Witnesses later recalled tears appearing almost instantly. Not loud crying. Just silent tears falling onto the paper. The waitress apologized. "Oh, I'm sorry. It must belong to someone else." Eleanor nodded gently. "I know. You know who?" She smiled sadly. "Not yet." She carefully refolded the page. Placed it exactly where she'd found it. Then walked away. She never kept it. Never photographed it. Never copied it. Nothing. When Daniel later realized he'd forgotten the letter, he rushed back. The paper was gone. Or so he believed. In reality, the waitress had placed it inside the cafe's lost and found drawer after clearing the table. Months later, the letter disappeared. No employee remembered removing it. No customer claimed it. It simply vanished. Like dozens of other details surrounding this story. As autumn approached once more, Eleanor's journal neared its final pages. Her handwriting slowed. Each entry became shorter. More uncertain. Almost as though she sensed something approaching. I think we're almost out of distance. I'm beginning to recognize your silence. I wonder if we'll know each other immediately. Then, 3 days before the journal ended, she wrote the shortest entry of all. Only 5 words. Tomorrow, someone says everything. She underlined nothing. Explained nothing. Closed the journal. The next morning, Daniel received an invitation to his coworker's engagement celebration. He almost declined. Then noticed the venue. Ashmore Community Hall. A place he'd never visited. The event began at 6. At exactly the same time, Eleanor planned to attend a local charity auction inside the very same building. Different entrance. Different room. One wall between them. 2 completely separate events. Neither knew. Neither could have known. Yet every surviving timeline shows they occupied the same building for 37 minutes. At one point, only 14 feet separated them. 14 feet. An ordinary hallway. One closed door. One missed turn. One distracted conversation. One ringing phone. History often remembers enormous events. Wars. Disasters. Great discoveries. It almost never remembers the tiny moments that quietly redirect entire lives. This story exists because of one such moment. At 6:42 p.m., someone accidentally announced over the building's public speaker system. Would Daniel Harper please come to the reception desk? He wasn't being called. It was the wrong Daniel. But hearing his own name, he stepped into the hallway. At that exact second, Eleanor emerged from the auction room carrying the unopened music box she'd finally decided to donate. She heard the announcement. She looked toward the hallway. He looked toward the reception desk. Neither noticed the other. Not yet. Then, the lights throughout the building flickered once. Twice. And suddenly, the music box Eleanor had never once opened itself. A single melody echoed through the hallway. Every conversation stopped. People turned. Daniel slowly looked toward the sound. Eleanor lifted her eyes. For the first time, their gaze almost met. And that was the exact moment someone screamed from the far end of the corridor.